Today's scripture reading brings us to Proverbs chapter 5. In Proverbs chapter 5, I have that divided into three sections. The first 14 verses, I have it titled as this, and that is the destruction of a strange woman. The strange woman being, in this context, it's speaking of an adulterous relationship. A strange woman, by definition, is one that is not of relation, and because it's not of relation in a marriage context, it is a sin in the sight of God. So verses 3 and 4, and actually 3, 4, and 5, I think the concept that we see here is something that we should take stock of. Verse number 3, it says, "For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell." Now, wisdom will dictate that you don't buy a ticket to an unknown destination, right? We should make sure that we are not living in the moment, but we are taking stock of what our actions will bring us not only today, but tomorrow and next week and next month, next year, and for the eternity to come. What is our actions going to bring us in the future? We need to make sure that we understand the destination before we get on that train. And the strange woman's destination is one of destruction. And Solomon warns of some specific destructions that it'll bring. Verse number 9, a destruction of social standing. Verse number 10, a financial destruction. Verse 11, a physical destruction. And really, verses 12 through 14 is a mental destruction, but I have it as a bitter regret. You read those verses, and it's like the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Looking back, I don't know about you. When I look back on life, I don't want to have those regrets. I don't want to wish I would have done something different, but that's exactly what the strange woman brings, is a wish and a regret that you hadn't done it. Because the moment is fleeting and it passes, but the results last forever. Now, the next portion of scripture that I have is verses 15 through 19, and that is the delight of thy wife. Now, if you read these verses and understand what he's talking about, it's pretty self-explanatory. When he's speaking about drink waters out of thine own cistern and running waters out of thine own well, he's not talking, about your faucet at the house. He's talking about your wife, and you see that there in verse number 18. Let thy fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. And, if you need me to explain what these verses are talking about, just look at number 19. It's pretty self-explanatory. But we should find that delight in our spouse, in our wives. For husbands, wives, for women, your husbands, you should find it there, and certainly can find it there. And when you do, and when you have a marriage of purity, and it's not polluted by strange women, it's a beautiful thing. And there's more satisfaction found in that relationship than there ever will be in the 1,700 wives, 300 concubines, or whatever that Solomon had. All right, so moving on, the last portion of scripture is verses 20 through 23, and I have that titled, The Display Before the Lord. I tried to alliterate it. I don't know how well it worked, but in these few verses here, the key verses certainly to pay attention to is verses 21 and 22. "For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins." There's nothing hidden from God. Nothing hidden from God. So we see that there. Kind of a final warning to close out the chapter. So the entirety of the chapter is speaking of adultery and the dangers thereof. But I wanted to make sure that you understood those few verses in there speaking about the contrast of that and the delight of thy wife. All right, so that's going to be the scripture for today. I hope it was a blessing unto you, and Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.